Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new video. Today's lesson is about behavioral reactions. We see here different pictures of different reactions, and these reactions are mostly involuntary. We don't think about them, or the individual making these reactions or these behaviors do not decide to make them. They happen without thinking. A behavior or a behavioral reaction is the result of the interaction between an animal or a human and its environment. As we see here, these living things, these animals or humans, are interacting with their environment around them. They are reacting to their environment. And this interaction is done by a reflex arc, which we call it's an involuntary action controlled by the nervous system. Let's see an example of what happens during a behavioral reaction or a reflex arc. Let's take the example of someone touching a hot pan. In this case, this is a diagram of the reflex arc. The stimulus here is the heat or pain. So the stimulus is the excitement, and it's sometimes chemical, it's sometimes physical. Like here it is physical because it's heat or pain, and this exciting substance or this excitement comes sometimes from outside the body, so it's external stimulus, and sometimes from inside the body, and it's internal stimulus. So after this stimulus is received by what we call a receptor, and in this case it's a skin receptor. They are receptors found inside the skin, special for pain and heat. Now, the receptor here translates the stimulus into a nervous message, and this nervous message is carried through the sensory neuron, which is responsible for carrying the sensation, the message of sensation, into the central nervous system or the nervous center. In this case, the nervous center is the spinal cord. Since this is an involuntary action, it's done without the direct interruption or direct action of the brain. It happens quickly. It shouldn't take long to happen. So here the spinal cord is the nervous center. This interneuron connects the sensory neuron to another neuron, which is the motor neuron. Now this motor neuron is responsible to carry the motor nervous message. This nervous message now, it's a command. It's a command from the central nervous system or the nervous center, and this command or order is sent to an effector organ. This effector organ, sometimes it's a muscle, sometimes it's a gland. In this case it's a muscle, because here when the message reaches the muscle of the arm, the muscle contracts, and this will cause the hand to repel or leave the pan quickly without even thinking about it. Here, this is the response or the reaction, where the man or the person holding the pan drops the pan from his hand quickly without even thinking. This action is this thing that happened is the response or the reaction. After the reflex arc is done and the reaction finishes, the message is there sent to the brain in order to process what happens. That's why after we make the reaction or the response, we realize later on what happened, and we know that we burned our hand or we touched something hot. So this is an example of the reflex arc or the behavioral reaction happening in our body as a result to a stimulus, which sometimes can be external, like this case, or internal. So now if we want to generalize the idea, we can say that the reflex arc consists of several elements. The first one is the stimulus. After that we have the receptor organ, which receives the stimulus and translates it into a nervous message. Then the sensory nerve or neuron carries this message to the nervous center. Then the nervous center sends a nervous message, an order, through the motor nerve to the effector organ, which as we said, it's sometimes a muscle or a gland, then the response or the reaction takes place, which is sometimes contraction of a muscle, moving a hand, moving a leg, maybe running away, maybe secreting a hormone, etc. So these are the elements of a reflex arm. Let's take other examples of a behavioral reaction. We have here a child who's closing his ears. He heard loud voices, for example. Let's see what are the elements in this case. First, the stimulus, of course, is the loud voice or loud sound. He received this from the outside environment. The receptor organ in this case is the receptors inside the ear. Okay. Here the nervous center in this case is the brain stem, since the message is happening inside the head. The sensory nerve is the auditory nerve, and it is responsible, the brain stem is responsible to give the command to the muscles of the arm, which are the effector organ. They are responsible for holding the arms up and allowing the baby or the child to close the ears, which is the reaction. So here the reaction or the response in this case is closing the ears. Another behavior is this dog, when he sees or it sees the food, it starts drooling, salivating. It secretes saliva and it's licking this saliva. Here the stimulus is the food, the sight of food. Sometimes it's the smell of food even. It smells the food also. We can consider this a stimulus. The receptor organ are the eyes, the retina of the eyes. In case it's the smell from other room, for example, it smelled the food. The receptor organ are the receptors in the nose, the olfactory receptors. And in this case also the nervous center is the brain stem, since the optic nerve, or if it smelled the food, the olfactory nerve are found in the head, and the brain stem will receive the message from the sensory nerves. Then the brain stem will send the motor nervous message or the command to the salivary glands, which are also in the head, because the reaction here in this case is drooling or salivation, which is excessive secretion of saliva. So finally, we can say that any behavior is a reaction to a stimulus, which is sometimes internal and sometimes it's external, which leads to a response or a reaction. Until here we reach the end of our video. I hope it was clear and easy. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Goodbye.